All right, let's plunge into some fascinating territory today. We're going to be talking about brain-computer interfaces and this whole idea of a wired brain. We'll be taking a deep dive into Slavoj Žižek's work, specifically an excerpt where he talks about the apocalypse of a wired brain. So get ready for some mind-bending stuff. We're going to try to break down his arguments and really explore what this kind of future could mean for you, for me, for all of us, really. So imagine a world where you could share your thoughts directly, your feelings, even your senses, with other people. Would that be like the ultimate utopia? Or a total nightmare, where you lose your sense of self? That's what we're here to unpack. And Žižek frames this whole discussion around this concept of apocalypse. Now, he's not just talking about the end of the world. He's using it in a more, I guess you could say, philosophical way.
Right. He's playing with the different layers of meaning there. The traditional religious meaning of apocalypse, like a revealing of hidden truths, but also that modern sense of catastrophe, a really disruptive event.
So it's like a double-edged sword almost. What kind of hidden truths are we talking about here?
Well, think about it. With BCIs, we could potentially see the neural activity behind our thoughts, emotions, even our dreams.
Whoa, that's pretty intense.
That could totally revolutionize our understanding of consciousness. But there's that flip side. That same ability to look into the brain could also be used to manipulate people, to control their thoughts and emotions.
That is a little unsettling, yeah. And this is where Žižek brings up Elon Musk's Neuralink project and the idea of the singularity.
Yeah, that sci-fi concept where human consciousness merges with AI into this kind of global mind. It's like everyone's connected.
Right, like a hive mind almost. And Žižek sees this as a potential apocalyptic event.
He does. And it's crucial to think about the political implications. Who's in control of this technology? Who benefits? And what happens to those who are left out?
Or choose not to participate.
Those are the big questions we need to be asking.
Before it's too late.
Exactly.
So we've got hidden truths about our minds, the potential for technological disaster, and this whole mind-blowing concept of the singularity. What else does Žižek have in store for us?
Well, he goes beyond just the philosophical stuff.
Yeah.
He also digs into the social impact of BCIs, especially in the digital age we're living in.
You mean like how our data is already being collected by companies and governments?
It's what Shoshana Zuboff calls surveillance capitalism. The idea that our digital footprints are being tracked.
And sold.
And monetized.
It's kind of creepy when you think about it. Like everything you do online is being watched.
And Žižek's point is that BCIs, they could take this to a whole new level.
So it's not just about tracking your Google searches anymore.
No, it could be your every thought, every emotion.
Even if you're not aware of it?
Potentially, yes.
That's seriously scary. Like surveillance capitalism on steroids.
But inside your head.
Yikes. How would that even work?
Well, imagine this. Right now, advertisers use data to predict what you'll buy. But with BCI data, they might know what you want before you even do.
That's crazy. Like they could influence your desires.
At the source.
Wow.
Or imagine political campaigns.
Yeah.
Targeting your hopes and fears.
Right.
Based on your brain activity.
That's taking manipulation to a whole new level. This raises some serious ethical questions.
Absolutely.
Would people even be aware of this level of influence?
It's a valid concern. And wouldn't this technology just make existing inequalities worse?
For sure.
Access to this technology and control over the data would likely be unequally distributed.
So you could end up with a world where the rich and powerful use BCIs to further their own interests, while the rest of us are left vulnerable to manipulation.
Exactly. So we've gone from mind reading to mind control and this potential dystopian future where our own thoughts can be used against us. But what happens to individuality in all of this? Do we even have a self anymore? If our inner world is being monitored and manipulated, that's a really interesting question. And that's something Žižek tackles head on. He questions the idea that thoughts exist separately from language. Like they can just be transferred from one brain to another.
So you can't just download someone's thoughts like a file.
Not quite that simple. He emphasizes the role of language in shaping thought and experience. He draws on this idea of externalism, which says that our thoughts, they're not just isolated in our heads, they're formed by our environment, our interactions, and especially by language.
So this idea of a pure, unmediated transfer of thought might be a bit of a fantasy.
It might be more complicated than that. There's always going to be some element of translation, of interpretation involved.
So even with a BCI, there's still this gap between our thoughts and how we actually express them. And that raises another question. What happens to individual identity if we lose that space, that distance between our thoughts and how we communicate them.
That's a key point. Will we lose the individuality, the creativity that comes from our unique experiences, the way we each process and express our thoughts?
It's almost like you're saying that language, with all its limitations, its imperfections, is actually what makes us human.
That's a great way to put it. And to illustrate this point, Žižek uses this thought experiment. Imagine sharing a sexual experience through a BCI.
Whoa. Okay, that's a lot to process. It makes you wonder, would experiencing someone else's pleasure be liberating? Or would it feel invasive? Would the immediacy enhance the experience or take away the mystery, the anticipation, the things that make desire so powerful?
Exactly. It really gets to the core of what it means to be human, to have a sense of self, to experience desire, intimacy, even love.
Would BCIs enhance these experiences? Or would they somehow flatten them, homogenize them, make them less meaningful?
These are the kinds of questions that Žižek wants us to grapple with.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential for BCIs to reveal hidden truths about consciousness, the risks of mind control, and amplified surveillance capitalism, and the threat to individual identity. But Žižek doesn't stop there. He goes even deeper.
He does. He connects all of this to his understanding of the unconscious, drawing heavily on the work of Jacques Lacan,
The psychoanalyst.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where I usually need a little help. I'm still not quite sure what Žižek means by the unconscious.
It can be a tricky concept. For Žižek, the unconscious is not just about repressed memories or hidden desires. It's a dynamic force that shapes our thoughts, our feelings, and actions in ways we're often not even aware of.
Okay. It's like it's working behind the scenes, influencing us.
Exactly. And it's shaped by language, culture, even our own bodies.
So it's not just about individual psychology. It's about how we're shaped by the world around us.
Precisely. And Žižek argues that this unconscious dimension, with all its complexity, its ambiguity, it's what makes us human. It's what sets us apart from machines, which operate on logic and predictable rules.
So Singularity is the singularity. Is about creating a super intelligent machine mind. Wouldn't that mean the end of the unconscious? Would we even have one anymore?
That's the question Žižek is wrestling with. And he suggests that the unconscious might actually be the key to our survival in the age of singularity.
So it's like our capacity for irrationality, our creativity, the way we make unexpected connections. Those might be the things that allow us to resist the homogenizing pressures of a machine mind.
You're getting it. It's our quirks, our eccentricities, the things that make us unique.
Those might be our greatest assets in a world dominated by AI.
It's a fascinating idea. The things that make us human are also the things that make us unpredictable, and therefore harder to control.
So it's like Žižek's saying, the more we try to eliminate our flaws, the more we risk becoming like machines ourselves.
That's a powerful way to put it. It's about recognizing and embracing the wildness, the unpredictability that lies at the heart of human experience.
That wildness could be what allows us to resist being assimilated to some kind of uniform, predictable collective.
It's a form of resistance, a way of asserting our individuality, even in the face of these powerful technological forces.
And that's maybe what we need to hold on to as we move into this uncertain future.
Absolutely.
That sense of ourselves as messy, complex, unpredictable beings.
That's the essence of what it means to be human. And it's something worth fighting for.
I think you're right.
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
Can we navigate this crazy new world, this world of interconnected minds, without losing what makes us human?
I mean, that's the hope, right?
Right.
But it's hard to imagine how we could merge with machines, create this global consciousness, and still hold on to our individuality.
Well, Žižek doesn't offer any easy answers.
All right.
But he does suggest something interesting.
What's that?
He suggests that those limitations, the very things the singularity aims to overcome, might actually be the key
to what?
To a new kind of freedom and creativity.
Okay, now I'm really confused. I thought the whole point of the singularity was to transcend our limitations, to become these super intelligent, interconnected beings. How can limitations be the key to freedom?
It's a paradox, right?
It is.
But think about it. Our imperfections, our quirks, our individual experiences, those are what make us unique.
I guess so. Everyone's got their own little quirks.
Exactly. And those quirks, they drive our creativity, our resilience, our capacity for love, humor, critical thinking. If we eliminate all those imperfections, strive for some kind of flawless, homogeneous existence, we might lose the very things less worth living.
It's like our flaws our struggles, they give us depth, they make us interesting.
Exactly. Erase all that, and we become like machines ourselves.
Cold and emotionless.
In a way, yes. And Žižek even suggests that the individual, the subject, might survive in the age of singularity, precisely as a point of resistance.
Resistance to what?
To total integration.
So it's not about rejecting technology altogether. It's about finding a way to engage with it critically, to hold on to our sense of self, even as we become more interconnected.
That's the challenge.
It is.
But it's not impossible.
So there's hope.
There's always hope. The singularity, even if it happens, won't be this monolithic, all-encompassing force. It will likely be complex, fragmented, with cracks and fissures, where individual experience and resistance can still exist.
And maybe even thrive.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a little more reassuring. But it still raises a lot of questions.
It does. Like, what does it even mean to be an individual?
Yeah.
In a world dominated by the singularity?
Right. How do we resist the pressure to conform, to be absorbed into this collective mind?
I think Žižek would say it comes down to this: embracing our imperfections, celebrating our individuality, and resisting that utopian desire for perfection.
So it's not about becoming flawless. It's about recognizing that our limitations,
A mortality, our unique flaw.
are what make us human.
That's a powerful idea.
It is. It's not about transcending our humanity, but about embracing it, even in the face of these radical technological changes.
You've got
Okay, so we're back. And we've been talking about some pretty intense stuff. Brain-computer interfaces, the singularity, this whole idea of a wired brain, and what it all means for being human. Before we wrap things up, I'd like to kind of shift gears a bit and talk about what a future that actually benefits humanity might look like.
That's a great question to end on. It gets to the heart of what Žižek is trying to do. He's not just warning us about the dangers of technology. He's challenging us to imagine a different kind of future, one that embraces our humanity, even as it pushes the boundaries of what's possible.
So how do we avoid falling into those traps, the surveillance capitalism, the ideological manipulation we talked about earlier?
It's tough, but I think it starts with recognizing that technology is never neutral. It's always shaped by the social and political forces of its time, and it can be used to reinforce existing power structures or to challenge them.
It's a double-edged sword.
Exactly. It all depends on who's developing it, who controls it, and what their goals are.
So we need to pay attention to the power dynamics, the agendas, the potential unintended consequences.
Absolutely. We need to be willing to ask those hard questions.
Like what?
Like about the trade-offs. For instance, if we're talking about using BCIs to enhance communication, we need to think about privacy violations.
That's a good point. Or, if we're using BCIs, to treat medical conditions, we need to think about access and preventing new forms of inequality.
You're getting it.
It's a lot to juggle. We want the benefits, but we also want to avoid the harms.
Right. It's a delicate balance.
How do we even begin to do that?
Well, I think Žižek would say it starts with awareness.
Awareness of what?
Of the ideologies
Yeah.
that shape how we think about technology. We need to be able to see through the hype, the marketing, to question the assumptions, and imagine alternatives.
So it's about taking back control, not just passively accepting whatever technology comes along, but actively shaping it to fit our needs and values.
Exactly.
It's about agency.
It is, and it's about having a vision.
A vision of what?
Of a future where technology serves human flourishing, not just profit or control.
It's a collective vision.
Yes, it requires us to have those open and honest conversations about the ethics of all this.
Even if those conversations are tough.
Even if they're uncomfortable.
So it's a shift in mindset from individual gain to thinking about the collective good.
You got it. The well-being of all of humanity, not just a select few.
It's a big ask.
It is.
But it's important.
It's essential.
And I think Žižek would agree that this kind of collective action needs to be grounded in a radical understanding
of what it means to be human. A vision that embraces our imperfections, our limitations, our interconnectedness.
It's funny because so much of the talk about technology, especially about the singularity, is about transcending our limitations, about becoming something more than human.
Right, like we're trying to escape our humanity, but maybe.
The key is to lean into our humanity.
Even as we explore these new frontiers. Exactly, because it's in our vulnerabilities, our shared experiences, our capacity for empathy, for compassion, that we find our common ground, our shared humanity.
And that's what can help us build a future that benefits everyone.
That's it. It's not about erasing what makes us human. It's about using technology to enhance our humanity, to connect us more deeply.
To ourselves, to each other, to the world around us.
And maybe, just maybe, it's in that embrace of our shared humanity that we find a way to navigate this potential apocalypse of the wired brain.
Not by becoming something else, but by becoming more fully human.
More compassionate, more connected, more aware of our responsibility to each other.
That's a beautiful thought. And a hopeful way to end our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have, from philosophy to politics to the very meaning of being human.
It's been a wild ride.
It has, but I think it's been a valuable one.
I agree. So if you take one thing away from this, let it be this. The future isn't set in stone. We have choices to make about how we develop and use these technologies. And those choices matter.
They have consequences.
So, stay curious, stay informed, stay engaged.
The future is in our hands.
Thanks for joining us.